He almost became homeless because of a one-night stand. Was he under a spell? Mary's head nearly hit the roof as the yellow bus Mary entered was galloping down the road. The driver tried to maneuver his way along the bad Lagos road. A young man who is about 24 years of age was sitting next to Mary. As the bus galloped up and down, the young man ran his fingers casually on Mary's lap. At first, Mary thought it was a mistake, but when he continued, Mary decided to play along. As the driver kept maneuvering the Lagos traffic, the young man continued his adventure on Mary's body. When he noticed that Mary knew what he was doing but didn't rebuke him, he then continued without any fear. The young man was enjoying his adventure, but Mary had a mission. When the young man reached his bus stop, he dropped from the bus and Mary dropped too. Just as the young man was about to go, Mary approached him and introduced herself. She cooked up a strange story of her life, asking the young man to let her stay at his place just for the night. Mary's story wasn't really convincing, but the young man saw this as an opportunity to continue his adventure from where he stopped in the bus. He introduced himself as Toby and agreed to shelter Mary for the night. Toby was a final year student of Lagos State University who lived outside the campus. He lived alone in an apartment which he rented close to the school. That night, Toby continued his adventure with Mary, but this time he wasn't hiding. The adventure was really intense as both Toby and Mary were sweating all over. Mary made sure the lights were switched on throughout the period, but when Toby was done satisfying himself, he slept off like a log of wood. Mary then stood up, dressed up, and walked to the corner where she hid her phone and ended the video recording. Mary actually recorded the whole fun she had with Toby. She is still very angry for how Obi and his friends damaged her life when they released her sex tape. Now, it's her turn to damage the lives of many men and she wants to begin with Toby. The next day, Toby rushed out to school very early because he had a lecture that started by 6:30 a.m. While in the school, he remembered that Mary, who is a complete stranger, is still in his house. His mind started racing through all the things that could happen if Mary disappeared with his belongings. He felt nervous and anxious and didn't know what to do. He became afraid because this is Lagos and anything can happen. Immediately his lectures ended, he rushed back home and found Mary sitting like a little angel on one of the chairs in his room. He quickly looked around and found out that all his belongings were still intact, and he made a sigh of relief. His trust for Mary has just increased. Mary could be a good girl, he thought to himself, and instead of asking Mary about her plans to continue on her journey, he went straight to Mary, pulled her up from the chair, gave her a tight hug, and moved her to the bed for some more adventure without a word. Days turned into weeks, and the girl who was supposed to be a one-night visitor is now becoming a member of the house. Toby was beginning to fall in love with Mary, and she is enjoying all the privileges of Toby's love. Mary was beginning to entertain male visitors in the house whenever Toby leaves for lectures. The men come around to have some fun and adventure with Mary and pay her some money in return. For now, Mary plans to gather all the money she needs to start her new life in Lagos from the men that come to Toby's house to have some good time with her. Now, this has been happening for 3 weeks, but Toby was not aware. While Toby was in school, Mary was busy making some money for herself. Mary has only spent 4 weeks in Toby's house, but she has entertained 13 men in that house. Out of the 13 of them, Mary recorded her sexual escapades with 12 of them. The only one she didn't record was when her phone fell down as she was trying to position it well for the recording. So she had to push the phone to the side and just let the man continue his adventure with her body. Some of the men that visited Mary were men of caliber who just wanted to secretly satisfy their urges. Mary was aware of this and was ready to cash in on it. One Thursday night, Mary carefully edited some of the videos of her adventure with the men that she slept with in Toby's house and sent out 5 of the videos to the men in the videos. She asked them to pay her some money or she will leak the videos. She threatened to leak the videos on social media if any of them refuses to pay. Initially, all 5 men threatened to deal with Mary. One of them even threatened to sue her to court, but Mary remained calm and stood her ground. She knew what she was doing. Moreover, when compared to the men in the videos, she has nothing to lose. In the end, the 5 men settled Mary. Her bank account grew from 400,000 to 2.1 million naira.
Hi, whenever you are in need of help, visit www.anyservice.ng to find the best professionals and artisans to help you. You can also download the AnyService NG app on the Google Play Store.
One day, Toby returned from school earlier than his usual time. He found his door open, so he casually entered into his room. To his surprise, Toby saw a man seated on his bed. The man was dressed in underwear only, with a stick of cigarette in his hand. When the man saw Toby, he didn't panic. He just stood up, dressed up, and left the house. The man's confidence was so intimidating, and Toby knew that this kind of confidence and fearlessness could not come from an ordinary poor man. The man, who was aged between 35 and 40 years old, looked too intimidating for Toby. So Toby acted with caution. He bottled up his anger and let the man go in peace. When the man left, Toby unleashed his anger on Mary. He began to shout at Mary and started bringing out her belongings from the wardrobe. He was going in and out of his room bringing out Mary's belongings when suddenly he got a notification on his phone. So he stopped to check the message that came in. What he saw made him freeze. He remained still for about 10 minutes. Next, he started returning Mary's belongings back to the wardrobe. Mary just sent him the edited video of their sexual adventure together with a message that says, "Do you still want to throw me out?" Mary did a good job at editing the video to make sure that her own face didn't show in that video. After Toby returned her belongings to the wardrobe, he angrily left the house without saying a word to Mary. Toby returned home after that evening drunk. At night, he woke Mary up to discuss about his sex tape. He begged Mary to delete the video, but Mary replied that she would delete the video only if Toby promised to let her stay in his house for as long as she wanted. Toby agreed and the matter was solved. Toby and Mary now lived like roommates. They were no longer intimate and they hardly spoke to each other. The sight of Mary irritated Toby, but he couldn't do anything about it. He needed a plan and he was desperate to find a way to throw her out. Now, Mary brings men to the house at will. She didn't care about what Toby would do or say. Toby now lives like a little boy who is squatting in his aunt's apartment. Life was becoming unbearable for Toby. He couldn't tell anyone about his situation because he was beginning to gradually lose his cool. Toby was one of the good guys who belonged to none of the gangs or secret cult groups in school. So he couldn't really get some bad boys to make Mary delete the video against her will. He knew a website, www.anyservice.ng, where he can find any kind of professional or artisan. So he thought about getting a computer programmer from the website to hack Mary's phone, but he couldn't do that. Toby was actually a good guy who met Mary and thought that he had found a way to explore his wild desires away from the judgmental eyes of his fellow good guys. Now, he is in a mess with no one to run to. One day, while Toby was away, Mary came in with a man. As usual, She set up her phone and recorded their time together. At the end, the man dressed up and paid Mary and drove off. After the man had gone, Mary dressed up and took the phone from where she hid it. The moment she opened the video she just recorded, a flash of light from the phone struck her and Mary went into a trance. Immediately, an invisible force took control of Mary and she stood up and left the house holding just her phone. Mary trekked for 2 days, not knowing what she was doing nor where she was going. Mary crossed roads, past the densely populated areas, bridges, and markets without knowing what she was doing. Even though Mary was not conscious of herself, she was being guided by some magical powers which protected her all through the way as she wandered around Lagos unconsciously. In the evening of the second day, Mary passed through an open gate and entered a very large compound. She went straight up into one of the rooms. As she entered the room, she fell to the floor and entered a deep sleep. Episode 4. She was kidnapped by a magician with dark secrets, but she ended up becoming a magician herself. How could she be so lucky?